Hello and welcome back to Kinboshi Sumo, where we are once again excited, as is tradition, because a Banzuke has dropped. We've had plenty of time to chew on it, and Nick, how excited are you?
I'm super excited for this time. I think top to bottom, this one looks like it's going to be very interesting.
I agree, and just like we talked about it, we went through this sort of interregnum with Terunofuji's injury where there was a lot of excitement, Mayurgeshira men winning championships, and actually where we've been sort of slogging through undoing the pandemic era where a lot of guys that should have been in Makuuchi weren't, and it really did dilute the competition there. And slowly these guys, Abi, Ryuden, Asanoyama, have finally worked their way back up into the top division, so I feel like things are kind of getting back to the way they're supposed to be, especially starting with the Sonyaku. Like, when you talk about it being stacked, that's kind of what I think of. I don't know about you, but just once again, I feel like we have a solid Sonyaku this time.
Yeah, and it's super nice, I bet, for Takakeisho to not have everything riding on him. Now we have Kirishima as a new Ozeki, Terunofuji's back. It's not just everything's on you.
Totally. It's a ton of pressure for a guy that's had these injury struggles in the past, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit here because he really has carried the division in a lot of ways through this era, and really does not get the credit he deserves. But again, it helps to have sort of a foil, right? Every little mistake he makes, if he's the only guy there, looks worse than it might otherwise. Whereas here, when you have the likes of Hoshoryu, Daisho, and Wakamoto Haru, who again, the Sumo Association has said all three of them are on Ozeki runs. Hypothetically, they could all become Ozeki. It's incredibly unlikely, but technically, I believe they could. Let's see, yeah, Daisho doesn't need to win it. Oh, no. They couldn't all do it. I think Hoshoryu and... Well, no, if one of them was a runner-up, maybe. Yeah, technically they could all do it. Very unlikely, but yeah.
Daisho needs 11, and then I think Hoshoryu and Wakamoto Haru, I think, still need 12.
Yes, I think that sounds right to me, too. And both Hoshoryu and Wakamoto Haru have never won a Yusho, so both of them would need to either win this or come runner-up in a tie or lose in a playoff for the equivalent, sort of.
Yeah, which I think would be super cool to see. However, I think when you look at the other four at the top, not super likely.
No, exactly. I mean, we already talked about, if Takakeisho is healthy, then that's devastating. We've seen the stunning form Kirishima has been in, and Terunofuji came back, and I don't know. I mean, I hope he's 2 months healthier because he already looked incredibly dominant last Basho.
Yeah, he looked good. Didn't look like there was a whole lot of injuries. I think there was maybe once or twice where it looked like he was maybe a little sore, but he looked good.
I know, yeah. He stuck with it the whole time. And then even down at Komusubi, sort of our like young guy challengers are really proven guys. Kotonowaka, we talked about how long the Sumo Association kind of tested him in the high Maigashiras before allowing him to move up into Sonyaku, and now he's been hanging hard at Komusubi in a good way, looking very impressive. And Abi has now won a Yusho. He is, whether people like him or not because they say he's so one-dimensional, which yes he is, but at some point, like, if you are so much better at the one thing you do than the other guy is at the four things he does, then it doesn't matter. But yeah, he's up there. Like, he's very much a solid contender there. He's not someone who we're like, when Tobizaru comes up to Komusubi, for instance, and we love Tobizaru, but like, you're always a little like, who can he hang on to this? And thus far, he has not been able to.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like you said, Tobizaru comes up, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. But it's going to be once for the next, like, 3 Basho.
Yeah.
Whereas Abi, you're like, oh, he'll probably hold on to it for a little bit. Like, I would say maybe he'll be up here for, like, 2, drop down a little bit, and kind of swap back up. That's just kind of what he's been doing.
Yeah. And really, I don't know why. There's no reason why he shouldn't stabilize up there permanently. You and I have both talked about, we kind of think Abi is a Sekiwake caliber fighter. So anytime he's not at Sekiwake, it feels a little disappointing, like he should be doing a little better, but not, I mean, being at Komusubi, you're not that far off from Sekiwake, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, he's very seasoned. He's fought these exact people dozens of times.
So many times, yeah. So there's going to be no fear. He knows he can beat these guys. He knows he can beat these guys and win a tournament. It's just a stacked Sonyaku, but the other area that I know you and I are always interested in are sort of those, I don't know, kind of like the lurking sharks, right? The guys who could leap up and surprise some people in that Maigashira 1 through 5 or 6 range, because those are the dudes who get to go up against the Sonyaku, so they're being tested against top competition, but still get some fights against maybe lesser opponents, so they can kind of pad their records a little bit. Is there anyone down there in that 1 to 5, 1 to 6 range that you think is particularly overranked or particularly underranked, or do you think they nailed it here the same way that we feel really solid about the Sonyaku?
It's hard to know. honestly, sometimes because I would say like Oho, Oh No Show, kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Ura's, I think, pretty solidly in his. Obviously, Asanoyama's. This is gonna be his only time, probably the last time he's at 4 or lower.
Yes.
He'll probably shoot right up. An interesting one for me is seeing Nishikigi at M1, but then I looked at his last record, and he beat Abi, Shodai, Kota Nowaka, Hokuto Fuji, Takakeisho, Wakamoto Haru. I'm like, I didn't realize he'd beat basically most of the best people. Like he earned it.
Yep.
But he's just like such a weird. You don't expect him to see that high.
I wasn't even thinking about him because I just saw him there and I'm like, yeah, that's about right. But I just pulled his record up now, so I'm just seeing this. But like, I remember, yeah, he started out awful in May, but it was worse. He started 1-6 in May and then reeled off 8 straight wins the back half of the tournament, including wins, like you said, against Shodai, Abi, Kotonowaka, Mitakeumi, Takakeisho, Wakamoto Haru. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's not like he got like padded wins at the end against like a bunch of like M10 and below. Like he went against a lot of the top and he won.
Yeah, I know. And he's a guy who should be able to hold court up in the M1, M2s because, I mean, just size, right? Like, I think that if you were an Oyakata and like building an imaginary sumo wrestler that you were not necessarily hoping to like catch lightning in a bottle and have some sort of like unique, exciting wrestler, but just like the typical, hey, what can win a tournament in 1968 and can also win it in 2008 and 2038? You build Nishikigi. He's tall, he's got long arms, he's heavy, but he wears his weight well. He can grab the Mawashi, or he can put his weight behind you and push you out of the ring. Like, he's kind of, I don't know that he does anything flashy, but he's just so solid in so many ways.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, he's not going to be, at least the way I see it right now, I don't see him as like a Sanyaku fighter, but I'm glad to see him up as high as he is, and it's fun to see him, like, he's going to go against a lot of tough people again, so we'll see if he can do it twice.
Exactly. Right, he might suffer from being one of those guys who is the foil that makes the Sanyaku look good, but, you know, whatever, you gotta get those chances up against those guys to prove that that's not who you are and that you're better than that, so here we go.
It was interesting, I was just kind of looking at Toby Zara, I'm like, oh, he's back up to Mega Shiro 1, and he went from M3 to M1 this time with an 8-7 record. I was like, oh, that's kind of goofy. Yeah. And then I saw last July he went 8-5-2, and he went somehow from M6 to M1. And I feel like he's the luckiest person.
Yeah, and because right. If you break this down and look at it, like he's often the beneficiary of like the JSA being like, ah, crap, we need to fill this slot. Who can we put in here? And it's like, Tobizaru.
Yeah, he gets kind of rolled sometimes, but he seems like he does well at the right times.
Yes. And make no mistake, again, you and I have made this point time and again or whatever, but like, I don't mean to make Tobizaru sound like a punchline because we love him or whatever, you know? Like, Flying Monkey is a hilarious name, things like that. But he is one of the best sumo wrestlers in the world by a wide margin. It's just that we don't see Ozeki ever in his future, you know, so it's always, that's where I fear that I don't want to make him sound like a punchline or whatever, but it's just like when we see him fighting in Ozeki, we're like, I don't know. But really, like, he's better than so many of you, well, almost everyone in the world of sumo, so there you go.
Oh yeah, 100% he deserves to be in this range. It's just funny to see him like get promoted like at these like goofy times when everybody else is tanking, but he's still up there for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. And then, so I'm totally on you there too, where like he might be the only one who's like technically overranked, I guess. But he's been here before. He's been Komusubi. Like, he should be able to hold serve here just like Nishikigi. Maybe he has bad luck like he's had in the past, but same could be said for Nishikigi. He's put up some real stankers before too. And then I'm also with you on the guy in this range who might be underranked as Asanoyama, and that just being, you know, that's just the way the math worked out. And next time depending on how it shakes out and who goes where, like, he should probably be back to Komusubi next tournament.
Oh,
you know?
I think that'd be pretty safe. Like you said, maybe like everybody in the Sanyaku will just be super, super strong, and like the scores just won't quite shake out that way. But I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Same, yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, sorry.
Oh, go. No, you go.
I'll say otherwise. You know, you're looking at like Mitakeumi, Meisei, Midori, Fuji. Who knows? Like, they're so up in the air. They could go anywhere.
Yep.
Which I do still want to point out that I think I said this last time, but it still shocks me that Meisei got I think it was the Fighting Spirit with an 8-7.
Yeah.
But then right across from him, Midori Fuji did not get it, 10-5.
Yeah, and I think it legitimately comes down to because he beat the Yokozuna. You know, and
Yep.
I think that's technically in the criteria for that award too, or whatever. Like, but still, it just the optics are strange, man.
And I mean, that was his only loss. The entire tournament was Meisei, but it was still like, I don't know, felt weird.
No, it doesn't feel normal. No, it does not. But Hidodoomi's a guy that we both like too. I'm glad you brought him up because even that M5, like, I don't know, that's sneaky interesting. Both of those guys, Hidodoomi and Onosho, I like both those guys. I hope they go on a run. I don't know.
I am really excited to see Hakuseiho up this high too.
Yeah. And they're like, that's either the bottom of this top tier or the beginning of that middle tier where actually usually it's kind of the toughest because you're fighting quality fighters, but you're not getting chances up at the Sanyaku guys, but you're also not really getting those free easy wins of the bottom dudes. But that M6 to sort of like M11 or 12 mid-range and stuff like that. Tell me, so like Hokuseiho, you got some high hopes for?
Yeah, and I think this will be a really good time for him to like really show off because I think in the last couple he's so tall and he's so strong. They go at each other. He basically just stands up and like kind of moves people.
Yeah.
But this is the range where that's really gonna stop working pretty quickly.
I think so too. But it's so interesting, because like he looks I don't watch basketball more, but like in the NBA, they talk a lot of times about how big men like get criticized and people say they're lazy or whatever. But if you act because they look so slow and lumbering when they're running or whatever, and you're like, no, that's just how they run because one leg span of theirs is like 3 leg spans of your point guard, man. Hokuseiho, I think, is the same way. It looks like he's so slow on the Tachiai. It looks like he's so lumbering on the Dohyo. But at the end of the day, it's because he's a giant. Like, if he moves, one slow sort of like 45-degree arc of his body is like the equivalent of grabbing a toddler by their wrists and doing a 360.
Well, yeah, you take somebody like Midori Fuji or Tobizaru, and his Mawashi's basically like in their face.
Yes.
That's such a weird place for some like the shorter people to have to like pivot from. That it adds a new dimension to it that they haven't had to deal with.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, right. And like, because where do you grab that guy? What do you even do? Do you just go for the leg pick, like, and then risk getting Hataki Komi? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, risk him just like kind of doing what he did the last time, just like reaching down, just maneuvering people in like a weird way that they're just not used to, and a lot of people went off balance.
Yeah, and then there he goes. So I'm also interested to see if he can continue sort of the slow grinding rise, maybe follow the Kotonowaka path up to the top. And then Oho, like you mentioned, Oho, I have no friggin' idea what's going on with this guy's career. He'll be so bad sometimes. And then I look down and I'm like, oh, he's M6 again. Okay.
Yeah, he barely stayed in the division and now he's at M6. You're like, why?
And I'm
you
like,
can do this.
The consistency, man. Be consistent.
Which unfortunately brings me to the next level, the M7s.
Yeah, but I'm stoked for them. Like, I love both these guys. They're both a couple of old guys who still have it in the tank, man. Tamawashi and Takayasu. Like, I would not be shocked if either of these guys was contending for the U show. However, yeah, go.
I have no idea what to expect from them. It could be anything. It sucks because they're in a place where I feel like like you said, they've got it. They've got the talent. They've got the ability. But man, their bodies are just falling apart. They've got to retire soon.
I don't know. Yeah, like, or keep sitting out tournaments. Yeah, what is happening? Well, I get that's not Tamawashi. That's just Takayasu. But I've made no secret of it on the pod. Big Papa Yasu is my favorite Rikishi. Has been since I started watching Sumo. And I'm just, what is happening?
No, I don't know. He could easily, like you said, they could contend for it, or they'll probably sit right there. I feel like they don't really go lower than this outside of like getting dropped for an injury, but right. I don't know.
I'm with you, yeah, because if they were any lower than this, they would definitely crush small baby boys.
Which is exactly what Takayasu did the last time.
Yeah, the last time he ended up so low. Yeah, the rest of this middle range, like, it's so tough. These are the guys who I think get caught sort of in the gears, the grind or whatever, like Takanosho. Greatest smile in Sumo, but at this point, I don't think it's happening. I'm kind of off that bandwagon finally because I thought that he was ranked at a spot where he really should have run train on some dudes and didn't do it last time. Sato Naomi is solid, the sad man, but I don't predict him. And Hokuto Fuji, same way, like this guy who had a lot of pedigree, and I love it's exciting sumo, love watching him slap his big bulldog face, but I don't know. Myoguru, another solid veteran dude. Tsurugisho, I have no idea how he's up at M11, but cool. Koto Eko is an exciting little guy. Chiyomomo just keeps grinding these things out. I don't know, but really the ones that I think are of interest in this middle tier are Choo Choo, our boy Nishiki Fuji, and Kimbo Zan after this big drop. What can you tell me about either one of them, Nick?
So it's interesting because like this has happened. This is at least the second time this has happened with Nishiki Fuji, where he got up top, got steamrolled, comes down, but then he comes back. He comes back fighting hard after these, and typically I think he's gone. He's somebody who's weird because he's taken some big hits and gone 3 wins, 4 wins twice, but then he gets 10-5 all the rest of his tournaments. There's no in between.
No. And I don't know what to do about it because a lot of times he's fighting the same guys and just having totally reversed results.
Sometimes, yeah, it's just a coin flip on the tournament. You're going to get one of those two, and I think at this range, he'll probably be closer to the 10-5. I'm pretty confident in that one. But Kimbo's on I think they just put him up too fast, where he should have been on the same route as Hakuseiho.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
Super talented, but it's like they didn't have the experience coming into this for him to shoot up to Megashira. I think it was 4. That was way too fast.
It was a real jetpack. Did you hear Kimbo-zan's coach's comments about him when the new Banzuke came out?
I did not.
I was only seeing it in translation, but it was something akin to well, good, I'm glad this happened to him. Hopefully now he realizes that he actually has to train and practice between tournaments. Like, savage.
No, and it really, I think at the end of when he was like, oh my god, this is so different from being able to ride through Juryo and just murder everybody, to see this, you're like, whoo, oh, there's some crazy strong people up here.
Yeah. And then right, because he had losses in his last 5 days where he went 0-5 at the end. Like, he was not doing well before that, but it could have been salvaged before then. But he lost to Koto Eko and Midori Fuji, the 2 Mighty Mouse men, they flipped him around and beat him, in addition to big bodies like Daishoho, who he should have been able to beat, and then Shodai and Kotonowaka.
Yeah, and I'm sure going in through it with an experience where you're like, oh, these two guys are pretty small, I could probably steamroll them, but they are so fast and they're so skilled. There's a reason they are where they are at their size.
Yep, exactly. Like, yeah, they look like guys you should be able to steamroll, but you have to ask yourself, hold on, hasn't Koto Eko been up here in this division for 16 consecutive tournaments? And then speaking of small guys who impress, just we'll tip a little hat here. This is going to be the end of it for Wakataka Kage. This will be his last Basho in Makuuchi before his 0-15s drop him into Juryo, and he'll probably end up somewhere in low Makushita by the time he comes back. It's sad, but we just got to wait and hope he comes back healthy and comes back strong. Yeah,
I feel like it'll likely be kind of like a Teru Fuji thing, unfortunately without the grace of the Yokozuna buffer.
Exactly.
But he's so consistently, he was never going to be an Ozeki, but he was consistently getting his 8 wins at Sekiwake. So I feel like after, I cannot remember exactly how long it was, a year-ish of surgery and recovery, I think he'll come back real strong. I think he'll be back in no time.
I think so, and especially the way the dude is sort of a gym rat and he's such a heavy trainer. I think you get him with a team of physical therapists and he's going to do everything they say. He's going to take care of his body and also build the muscle around it. That's the thing is you usually get around injuries like that by strengthening all the muscles around them. And if there's anything I've seen Wakataka Kage do successfully, it is strengthen specific muscles.
Yeah, and honestly, with some of these people, when they go through that specific of training, they come back even better.
Yeah, especially if he learns some new techniques, some ways to move his body that take some of the pressure off of those injured areas, because that could also then surprise his opponents who are used to fighting him specifically with that strong left arm and that very prototypical style that he became known for. If he can throw something else into the match, then it's only going to benefit him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see once he has to strengthen his whole body and then go back to the training, when you kind of flip the order of importance there, it could change quite a bit.
Agreed. I'm super excited to see it, but in the meantime, he's going to give way to more young guys who hopefully come up and strengthen the division. But speaking of it, this is the pipeline from Juryo right now, we are finally starting to reap the rewards here of the last couple years that everyone's been anticipating. But Bushozan is back up, which I like. I love the guy. He is always going to be sort of down in these ranges. But like, he's so much better than he's so stuck as a yo-yo man. He's so much better than Juryo, but he's just not quite Makuuchi. I don't know. But more importantly, the protege of Goeido, Gonoyama, is up after an incredibly impressive title campaign in Juryo, going 14-1, losing only to Atami Fuji, who we've seen up in Makuuchi previously, who is another guy that I thought borderline could have come up, but he's one of sort of now these last young guns, this next generation in Juryo waiting to come up. But also Shonan Noumi came up, who's a guy that really surprised me. So he's only 25 right now, and just came out of nowhere. Like, he won he didn't even win. He was like 5-2 at M1 in Makushita, and then came up and just had a 12-win tournament, 9-win, 11-win, and in 3 tournaments got himself promoted from Juryo. He's incredibly impressive and a really big guy. I think you'll be excited to watch him, Nick. Like, he's just a dude who hangs his weight on a big frame really well and still maintains some of the speed. But even if it's impressive that he only took 3 Juryo Basho to come up, whereas a guy like Gonoyama actually took a year to get up, which is about the more prototypical route. One man with another name change, Hakuoho, the former Ochiai, only 2 Juryo Basho. He also went 14-1, but lost to Gonoyama, so he tied for that record. But this is only the 19-year-old's 4th tournament, and it is going to be at Maegashira 17.
I am blown away by the fact that, like you said, he's done 3 pro tournaments, and now he's in Makuuchi.
It's insane.
Like,
he's 19 years old.
It is great. I'm hoping it's not like when we saw Atomic Fuji come up with like so much promise and just get absolutely obliterated down. And that took him a while to recover.
I know, he's only just now getting back to, and Atomic Fuji, same story. He was 19 years old when he got to Makuuchi. It was really impressive, and then boom.
So, and I know everybody's super excited, but also I think we've talked about a little bit this is a really tough lower half, like lower third for like the first time in a long time.
Yeah. So this bottom chunk here, we'll do the M12s to M17 or whatever, but you've got Chiyomomo, who's a KG veteran, Wakataka Kage, we have to wash out. But then you've got the young guys, Gonoyama, Shonan Noumi, Hakuoho, and then Bushozan coming up from Juryo. But we have the likes of Takara Fuji, the sexiest legs in the division, Ryuden, who just made his stunning rise back up and was way up in that M1, 2, 3, 4 range. Endo is down here, who is a college Yokozuna, I believe, when he was in college. Aoyama is here. Like, I'm not saying these guys are at the height of their career, although Endo kind of is at the height of his career. This is insane that this is who these young guys are going to go bang against.
Yeah, and I mean, even if some of these guys that you mentioned are kind of downward at the moment, they're still tough. Like, that's not going to be easy.
It's like what we were talking about with Tobizaru. Like, I think when, and we were just talking about this, like, in the English-speaking world, NHK curates what we're able to watch so aggressively that we have this very limited view of sumo, and it will actually damage and warp your understanding of the sport. I wish NHK would do a better job showing us the whole picture of sumo, even maybe showing us high school and college sumo in addition to lower division professional sumo. But you get to this point where you're like, oh, Yama, that guy is like, even, I'm going to put him on blast. Our buddy Aaron, who watches sumo with us or whatever, is always like, oh, Yama's garbage. I hate that guy. And I'm like, or he's one of the 40 best sumo wrestlers, like, in the world?
Yeah, and his, like, at his career, like, he was just wrecking through people, but he's just been doing it for a while. But yeah, even on the downward spiral, it's still an M17. Then you look at the hundreds of people below him.
Yep. Hundreds and hundreds of people who will never reach him, even in diminished form. Yep.
Yeah, they won't reach his bottom level here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like this, it's the same thing that I'm like, hey, this is awesome. Bushozan's at M16. Good. I'm glad to have you back. Oh, Aoyama's down at M17. I don't know, or whatever. And it's like, it's one rank. It's actually a half rank difference between those two guys or whatever. That's the difference of expectations. And I think that's actually a good transition point, because we wanted to talk a little bit about a story that you found on just r/sumo, the sumo subreddit, because user Chiyomomo, like a month ago after the tournament, made this awesome post breaking down the numbers of Takakeisho, because Takakeisho, we both think, is a victim of this sort of like limited view, this sort of myopic way that sumo is consumed, where people frankly don't give him enough credit for what he's done. And if you look historically, he's actually one of the greatest of all time. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to you, Nick, just to give us a little overview of sort of this idea.
Well, and I think he, like you've said, he's a victim of coming out of like the post Hakuho era. Like there was just those couple of bad Ozeki with him, but he winning 3 Basho puts him so much higher. Oh God, what was the score? He's one of the top Ozeki ever. Sorry, now I'm blanking on this one.
I'm looking at some
he's one of only quote Chiyomomo exactly, he's one of the only 6 modern Ozeki in the last 50 60 years to win at least 3. His Yusho rate was 8%. Only one other Ozeki has a rate higher than that, has rate higher than 5%, and his Jun Yusho rate was 30% because he keeps getting so close. Like his skill level is so much higher than, like you had said, everything is so skewed, especially over maybe the last couple of years, but he's performing at a level almost historically high.
Right. And that Junyu show is the thing. I'm glad you pointed out that quote too, because that's the thing that I think no one does a great job of analyzing, because we talk about this with Takayasu too, where Takayasu is sort of like held up as this example of wasted potential, of lost opportunities. He's this wrestler who never was. And I'm like, or it's really hard to be number 1 out of this group of 42, and he was runner-up 7 times, which, like, the difference between being number 1 and number 2 is such a slim, hair-thin margin.
And I think it's just your classic, like, sports, like, people focus so hard on the win, and they just kind of ignore everybody else, but coming in second place, like, that's obviously, it's not a joke.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be really good to get that high, and, like, and look, we've talked about a bunch of times, he literally basically held on to the division at the top by himself for like the last year.
Yeah, exactly. He and he just like stood there and banged it out, came back injured, kept holding on, like, and then even to go back to the Chiyomomo point, like you said, so when he talks about the modern era, I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe generally when I hear the modern era in sumo, I think of since 1958. 1958 is when they first started doing 6 basho a year, 6 hon basho. Before that, they did 4. They did the seasonal bashos. You did one for summer, fall, spring, winter. So that we really can't compare stats across divisions further back than that, because those guys had so many fewer opportunities to win titles. So we can only compare the guys who every year had 6 shots at it. But when we look at that and actually break it down, Takakeisho is tied for 16th in the modern era for total U shows, which is insane in its own right. And then in addition to that, when you were talking about like modern Ozekis and stuff like that, the guys above him, numbers 1 through 14, remember he's tied for 16th. Numbers 1 through 14 are all Yokozuna. So, you know, the guy was amazing. Is amazing. He's not even done.
Yeah, no, and it's literally just his injury rates have slowed him down a little bit, and maybe now he'll be able to. I don't know that he will. He's got a lot of pride. Like he was the Ozeki. Like not even just saying singular, but like I feel like he was like the definition of what you want for an Ozeki, and he takes that very seriously. Mm-hmm. But going to that Chiyomomo article, he also pointed out that adjusting for his injuries, his career win-loss is 62% win. This is the second highest of all modern Ozeki. All of them.
Wow. That's bananas. Like, because that we talk all the time, you know, about people laying an egg or grinding out an 8 and 7. And that's one thing that people have really been critical of Takakeisho lately. And again, maybe it's new sumo fans like ourselves. I've only been watching sumo for like 3 years and change, and I think you're in on like 2 years, right, Nick?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah, and so like, you know, we have limited sample size. We can go back and watch some old videos. We can read stats. We can read articles from the Japan Times or other places. But you know, when he's been injured a lot over this last year and a half, and he was doing right there, he got lumped in with Shodai and Mitakeumi, where they kept doing the Kadoban 8 and 7, Kadoban 8 and 7, that kind of thing. I think that definitely warped people's expectations, but that's why I'm glad you brought that stat up, because that shows you like No, that's not who he is. That's not who he's ever been. He wins his matches at a 2/3 majority clip.
Well, yeah, and he's been pretty consistent. He's been at the Ozeki rank since
That's true. Those wins are all coming against Sanyaku dudes.
November of 2019. But prior to that, it looks like he had gone for an injury. He went, got demoted to Sekawake once, got 12 wins, so he got bumped back up and has never dropped since then. And that was during that peak era where you have Hakuho with 45 Yusho wins.
Right. And that's another thing that we have not brought up yet, but that needs to be talked about is Hakuho took all the oxygen out of the room. Even someone like Kakuryu, who I think has gotten shortchanged historically, like, the problem is that his Ozeki run was from like 2014 to, or his Yokozuna run was like 2014 to 2020ish or whatever, like square in that Hakuho range. Remember, Hakuho turned pro, like got to the top division when he was like 16 or 17, something insane like that. He won his first Yusho in 2006 and then won his last one in 2021. That's how long that he took all the oxygen out of the room.
And Takakeisho got up to that rank during that time when everybody was good.
Yep, exactly. So there was no room. Even when someone as good as the likes of like Goeido only got one Basho win because he constantly was coming up runner-up to Hakuho, it's impressive that Takakeisho built his career in that tiny gap that was left by Hakuho.
Which all these numbers just justify the fact that we've been right the whole time, and he's great.
We are super smart boy gold star geniuses, 100%.
And now I can justify my gut about the whole thing.
Exactly. Thank you, Chiyomomo. You have given us the numbers, data, and impetus to justify the things we wanted to say anyway. And then beyond that, though, let's talk about this coming Basho, and if we, Nick, can Takakeisho get another Yusho?
I don't think so.
I know! After all that, yeah.
And yeah, down to deflate everything we just pumped up. He looked so rough at the end of the last one. I'm glad he squeaked out the 8. I'm still really impressed that he didn't just call it going against Terunofuji.
Yeah.
But he's not going to take it. I'm going to be honest. I think it's going to be another Terunofuji, which will put him closer to that double digit.
Yeah, baby. He wants to end with 10. But like, okay, so two things. First, like you said, like how could anyone in their right mind pick against Terunofuji when he just came back and went 14-1 and beat everyone they put before him besides Meisei? Like, how? And then the other thing is just Takakeisho, even if he's great, I just can't help but think back to, I think it was November 2022 in Kyushu. He's on a great run. It looks like he's going to get the win, and Terunofuji didn't look that good. He looked beatable. And then, Terunofuji snaked him at the end anyway. So, that's kind of, I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah. It's when he's even remotely healthy, Terunofuji is just not. You don't win.
Yeah.
He just kind of steamrolls everybody. He was very badly injured before he went out, and he was still clearing double-digit wins.
It's so true. We and again, that sort of like altered optics kind of thing is when Terunofuji was going 12-3, and everybody was like, "He's cooked. Get him out of here. Tell him to retire." And meanwhile, like just to talk about our previous, if Aoyama goes 12-3, then we're like, "It's a renaissance."
You're like, "He's back. This is it." And you're like,
"Now's his time."
The fact that Takakeisho, even, again, just like Terunofuji, injured badly, he's still pretty consistently taking out, like, if you see him at 10-5, you're like, oh, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I mean, I think they'll bang up there, and I think it'll be good, but this one should be Terunofuji's to win. How about the 3 Sekiwakes? Who, if any, do you have going to Ozeki?
I would still put it on Daisho. 11 is, he can do it. It's not going to be easy. No. But Hoshoryu and Wakamoto Haru, I don't think either of them have gotten 12 wins. Mm-hmm. Especially, not, at least not in the Sanyaku for sure. So that's a tough ask. I mean, it's a fair ask to say, especially for Wakamoto Haru, who's like, he really skyrocketed up here. It's like, yep, you got to get you 12. Totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. I would put it on Daisho, who has been able to get that at least in the past.
Yep, me too. Especially like you look at it where he's ranked. 11 wins means 4 losses. He has 4 losses he can give. if you assume that he's going to lose to all the 3 guys above him, which you shouldn't, but I mean, Kirishima has owned him of late. Teru Fuji, we talk about how dominant he is, but remember, Daisho was the first guy to sort of figure out how to beat Teru Fuji back in January of 2021 when he won his Yusho. So I think that is a factor as well. And when Daisho and Takakeisho both go toe-to-toe, like, I don't know, a couple pusher thrusters. Traditionally, Takakeisho has actually owned him, so maybe that is a second locked-in loss, but maybe not. Maybe that's 50-50.
Yeah, and I do think the only reason he's not, I think part of the reason he's not at Ozeki right now was when Karabayama beat him, and then they redid the match. He did the same thing. He went in too aggressively and just got sideswiped.
Yep, I agree. It was that, I don't know, that was tactical, or I have no idea if he makes that call himself or if his coach gives him any kind of advice or if they had discussed it ahead of time. I have no idea, but it was brutal to watch because exactly like you said, there was so much on the line, and then he had the same strategy and the same out.
And I think, and I get it, he just wants to end it as quickly. Like, pusher thruster against him is very difficult to win. He can go in, hit him hard, get him out, win, and then you're like, you got your promotion.
Yep.
And he just miscalculated because Kirishima is fantastic.
Yeah, and now, exactly, he proved it by following up with the next couple tournaments, whereas a lot of these guys we saw have a good run, then faded immediately afterwards. No, he was very consistent. I mean, obviously, he got to Ozeki with 11, 12, 11 in a Yusho, so the guy's good. But we will have to wait to actually see that when the Basho starts, and we are precious time away from that, just about 2 weeks exactly from the time of recording this, so until then, looking forward to it. And Nick, I'll see you soon.
Yep, see you soon.
Bye.